new smartphones in yesterday's online event. First is the 5G phone known as Xperia 1 Mark II, which is a flagship phone with some amazing specs. Second is the mid-range phone Xperia 10 Mark II, which includes a modest spec sheet but manages to grab a few of the flagship Xperia 1 features. And next is the Xperia L4, an entry-level phone. Actually, this was launched a week ago, but I've included it just for the clarity. And lastly, we have Xperia Pro, a phone designed for video creators. So we are going to check out all these, so without further ado, let's begin. Starting with the most powerful phone of the bunch, Xperia 1 Mark II. Like every other Sony smartphone, the design is very square and rather handsome looking, while the rest of the industry is all about maximizing display space with camera notches and pop-up camera. Sony has a pair of symmetrical bezels on the top and bottom that houses front-facing stereo speakers and the front camera. To be honest, I really like this design. And one more thing, it also brings back the 3.5mm audio jack that was entirely absent on last year's model. There's also a fingerprint sensor on the right side of the phone. Xperia 1 Mark II's most obvious strong point is its 6.5-inch 4K HDR OLED panel with a 21:9 cinematic ratio. To further improve it, Sony is using something known as motion blur reduction, which Sony claims can match the benefits of a 90Hz display by analyzing what's on the screen and adjusting individual frames to reduce frame lag. Now the big question that comes to mind is whether it can replace 90Hz panel or it's just a gimmick. Anyways, it is powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset with the 5G modem that works on sub-6 GHz networks. It has 8 GB of RAM and 256 GB of UFS 2.1 storage. It can also be expanded via microSD card. Coming to the cameras, which is its main selling point. The Japanese company proudly announced that the new cameras are calibrated by Zeiss specifically for the Xperia phone with the anti-reflective coating that was previously available only in professional lenses. This should mean less ghosting effect when you shoot against a source of light. The lenses are located on the top left of the phone and are unchanged in terms of resolution to Xperia 1, but the new setup brings bigger sensors and faster lenses. The smartphone features a 12-megapixel main sensor, plus 12-megapixel ultra-wide, plus another 12-megapixel telephoto lens and a 3D time-of-flight sensor. Up front, there is an 8-megapixel camera for selfies. The Xperia 1 Mark II also comes with the eye autofocus from Xperia 1, but this time it also works on animals. Sony says this is the first smartphone that can do 20 FPS bursts with AF tracking, which means that all shots in the burst will be in focus. It also has many more camera applications to make videos and photos much better. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark II runs on Android 10 and has 4000 mAh cell with fast wired charging as well as wireless charging. Regarding dust and waterproof resistance, it gets IP68 rating. This phone will come out in the second quarter of the year in black and purple color options and will retail for 1200 euros. Note that there is no 4G version, there is only 5G. Moving on to the mid-range Xperia 10 Mark II. The Sony Xperia 10 Mark II looks very familiar to the predecessor, packing a candy bar design. But this time the improvements are many, including IP68 water resistant and triple camera setup and an upgrade from LCD to OLED. The star of the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II is the display. This is for the first time that Sony featured an OLED display on a mid-range phone. This means you get the richer color and deeper blacks found on flagship level devices, albeit for a full HD+ resolution. The 6-inch OLED display also offers the same 21:9 format that we have seen in other recent Sony devices including flagship ones. The processor that powers the phone is the Snapdragon 665 chipset, which is decent but not much powerful as some of the recent mid-range processors. It's paired with 4GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. The battery also gets an upgrade from 2780 mAh to 3600 mAh this year. Unfortunately, there is no quick charging on board, or we don't know if it's present because the official website doesn't say anything about that. It will come with a side-mounted fingerprint scanner. It's also great to see the headphone jack remains, though that's not unusual for mid-rangers. On the software part, the smartphone runs on Android 10 out of the box. While the flagship device comes with a fully stacked camera setup, The Sony Xperia 10 Mark II is more modest affair. The main 12 megapixel camera sensor returns but is backed by two 8 megapixel sensors. The Sony Xperia 10 Mark II is also coming out in Q2 with a choice of black and white exteriors. It will retail for €370 for the 4G phone with 4GB RAM and 128GB of storage. Now coming to the cheapest of the bunch, Xperia L4. The Sony Xperia L4 gets a display of 6.2-inch HD Plus which has a U-shaped notch for selfie camera. The display has an aspect ratio of 21:9. It is supported and powered by octa-core MediaTek Helio P22 chipset with the RAM of 3GB and 64GB of internal storage. The latter can be expanded further via 512GB using a microSD card. In the photography department, Sony Xperia L4 gets a total of 3 cameras at the rear part. The setup comprises of a 13 megapixel rear camera, 5 megapixel ultra-wide sensor and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. For the selfies and video calling, you get 8 megapixel shooter. It will come with a battery backup of 3580 mAh and considering it has HD Plus display, the battery will last longer. The phone supports the face unlock and also gets a side-mounted fingerprint scanner like all the Sony phones. On the software part, the smartphone runs on Android 9 Pie. I forgot to mention all the models which I mentioned in the video support NFC. Now the Sony Xperia L4 which was unveiled last week will similarly come out sometime in Q2 and it will cost €200 at launch with the choice of blue and black paint jobs. Coming to the final phone for today's video, Sony announced the new Xperia Pro smartphone which is sadly still under development. But we know that it closely matches with Xperia 1 Mark II. Additionally, it gets HDMI port and will integrate with Sony Alpha cameras that can use it as a viewfinder and then leverage its 5G connectivity for broadcasting. The smartphone will also have a customizable shortcut key on its side that will let you launch any app in an instant. The Xperia Pro will come with a storage up to 512GB and features a sturdier body. Its body will apparently be similar to Alpha cameras. The Xperia Pro is said to have a 4-way 5G mmWave antenna arrangement for better connectivity with speeds that can reach 5 Gbps or faster. And with that, we come to an end of this video. Hope it was helpful. See you in the next one. Peace out.